Outside the treehouse window, a storm of knives is falling, and a boy and his dog are trapped inside, and the dog, with nothing else left to do, decides to daydream. Then the daydreams start taking shape in the room around them. The floor becomes lava. Impossible creatures crawl out of nowhere, real and dangerous, though only the dog can see them. I love that this is where the show first quietly admits how strange it is willing to get. So tonight, that is the whole idea. We are drifting through the most reality-bending, trippy episodes of Adventure Time, the ones where dreams leak into the world and the world stops behaving. Let yourself go a little unanchored, the way you do in the seconds before a dream takes the wheel. And don't try to keep your feet on the floor. If a quiet voice in the dark is your thing, a subscribe is how the next strange one finds you. No rush, nowhere to be. Welcome to Pine Hat. Let's start where the floor first turned to lava, in a quiet treehouse on a rainy day. I want to start you somewhere quiet and a little dangerous, on the far side of a window where the only thing falling is knives, not rain. Knives, a whole sky of them coming down silver and endless over a forest in a world that ended a long time ago. And inside, in a hollowed out tree that two friends have made into a home, a boy and his dog are stuck. They can't go out, there's nothing to do. Outside the glass, the storm just keeps coming, blade after blade after blade, and it never once gets in. And honestly, that image alone is most of the reason I wanted to begin here. Because read this way, a storm of falling knives is almost the perfect picture of what sleep content is supposed to feel like. Think about it. Real danger, real edges, the kind of thing that would absolutely ruin you if it touched you, and yet it can't. There's a wall of glass between you and all of it. You're warm. You're inside. The bad weather is somebody else's problem now, the way a whole hard day suddenly stops being yours the moment you finally lie down flat and pull the blanket up. The threat is still out there. You just can't reach it anymore, and it can't reach you. The show puts that feeling on screen in the very first minute, knives and all, and never raises its voice about it. The boy is Finn. The dog is Jake. And Jake, who stretches and bends and folds himself into any shape the moment calls for, gets bored faster than anyone alive. So Jake decides the cure for being trapped is to daydream. Just lie back and imagine somewhere else, somewhere better. The way you do when the ceiling is the only view you've got. Reasonable. Gentle. The kind of thing you might be doing right now, eyes already heavy. Except in this house, the daydream doesn't stay in his head. It starts showing up in the room. Slowly, almost shyly at first, the things Jake imagines begin to materialize around them, taking on weight and edges and presence until the make-believe is standing there breathing the same air they are. Imagined obstacles turn into actual traps. Ghosts drift up out of nothing. Monsters take shape in the corners. There's even a fountain of poison summoned out of pure idleness, just because a bored mind reached for it. The two of them have to move through a living room that has quietly become a minefield made of nothing but thought. And that is the whole reason we're here tonight, you and me. We're going to drift, slowly, through the episodes where this cartoon let reality come loose at the seams. The ones where a children's show forgot for a little while that it was supposed to keep its feet on the ground, and instead went wandering into dreams, into other timelines, into whole lifetimes that pass in the space of a few minutes. I'm not going to rush you through any of it. We've got all the time in the world. The plan is just to wander these strange rooms together until you fall asleep. So let me put the real question on the table, the one I keep turning over, the one this whole night hangs on. How thin is the wall really between what we imagine and what is actually there? Between the things we make up in the dark and the things that are solid? Because that's the trick this episode is built on. And it might be the trick the whole series is built on. A daydream that becomes physical is, if you read it that way, a quiet little thesis statement for everything that comes after. The mind in this show is never a private place. It doesn't stay sealed up behind your eyes, where it's safe. It leaks. It spills out into the room and rearranges the furniture, and occasionally hands you a fountain of poison. And that's a strange thing to learn from a cartoon, that your inner world has weight that it can press out into the real one. Strange, and somehow lying here, almost comforting. I'll tell you something I love about this particular one before we go further. The man who made the show, Pendleton Ward, called this his favorite episode of the whole first season. And I think you can feel why. There's something so pure about the premise. No villain showing up from outside, no quest, no map. The danger is just two friends and the inside of one of their heads, and what happens when there's nothing to do and too much imagination to do it with. The call is coming from inside the house, except the house is a mind. Now, I'll be honest with you, fans have gone back and forth on what's actually happening in that room, and I don't want to pretend it's settled. Some read it as Jake's imagination genuinely bending the world, the daydream made real, full stop. Others think it's more of a shared hallucination, that Finn is somehow caught up in the same vision, the two of them dreaming the same dream while wide awake. The sources differ on this. Nothing in the show ever stops to explain it to you, and I sort of love that it doesn't. The not knowing is part of the spell. It leaves that wall between imagined and real exactly as thin and as foggy as it feels at this hour, when you can't quite tell anymore which of your own thoughts are decisions and which ones are already the first frames of a dream. And here's the part of all this that I find genuinely calming. The structural part, if that's not too strange a thing to find soothing. The show keeps doing this. Over and over across the years, it slips its characters into states that look a lot like sleep. So tonight isn't a countdown. I'm not ranking these for you biggest to smallest, loudest to loudest, the way these things usually go. We're just going to drift from one to the next, like rooms in a very large and very quiet house, and presenting it as a wandering itinerary instead of a countdown is the whole point. A countdown builds, it climbs, it wants you awake at the top to see number one. An itinerary just moves you gently along room to room, keeping your body in that slow downward drift toward rest. No peaks, no jolts. That's the promise. Nothing here is going to grab you by the collar. Because somewhere ahead of us in this house, there's a room I want to walk you into, very, very slowly, when we get there. A pillow fort. Just cushions and blankets stacked up the way you did as a kid. And inside that little fort, a whole life gets lived. A person grows up there, gets old there, and dies there, and then steps back out of it as a child again, blinking, as though no time has passed at all. Because in the room it hasn't. A lifetime folded down into a few soft minutes. I'm not going to say more than that for now. I just want you to know it's coming, the way you know there's a quiet room at the end of a hall, and that we'll sit in it together when the time is right. There are other places we'll go to, and I'll just name a few of them softly so you've got a sense of the shape of the night without having to hold on to any of it. There's a worm's dream we get pulled down into, a sleep inside a sleep. There's an astral drift, where a body lies still and something looser than the body comes free and floats all the way out to Mars, of all the lonely places to end up. There's a swim down into a mirrored ocean, the kind of water that shows you yourself before it shows you anything else. A worm's dream. A long, quiet float to Mars. A mirror you can swim into. That's a little of where we're headed, and there's no hurry to get to any of it. But it all starts here, in this trapped little treehouse, with the knives coming down outside and a bored dog deciding to dream with his eyes open. So let's go back inside that room and stay a while, and walk through Rainy Day Daydream in full. The whole invisible world Jake conjures up around them, and the strange machine they'll eventually need to switch the whole thing off. So let me take you back through that room more slowly, because the strangest part is what Finn can't see. The rain is coming down outside the treehouse, the kind of gray, endless rain that pins you indoors and makes the afternoon feel like it has no edges. Finn is bored. Jake is bored. And boredom in this show is never just boredom. It's a pressure that has to go somewhere. So Jake does the only thing a creature with an infinitely flexible body and an infinitely flexible mind can do on a rainy day. He starts to imagine, and in Rainy Day Daydream, the moment Jake starts to imagine, his imagination becomes physically real. Not real to everyone. That's the catch the whole episode hangs on. It becomes real, and it becomes solid, and it becomes dangerous, but it stays invisible to Finn. Sit with that for a second, because it's such a quiet, clever little engine to build an episode around. Jake can see the world he's dreaming up. Finn can't. So you get this gentle, lopsided comedy where one friend is wandering through a landscape of marvels and threats that the other friend simply cannot perceive. Jake watches the carpet ripple and ignite. Finn sees carpet. Jake watches some impossible thing unfold itself out of the air. Finn sees the living room, and the danger is real for both of them, which is the part that tightens the screw. Finn has to cross a room that to him looks completely ordinary, while it is quietly trying to hurt him. Let me walk you through what actually fills that room, slowly, the way you'd notice things in a dream where the details arrive one at a time. The floor becomes lava. That's the first big one, and it lands like a memory before you even register why. Then the impossible creatures start to emerge, pulling themselves out of nowhere, taking up space, becoming obstacles with weight and intent. There's a fountain that runs with poison instead of water, sitting there in the middle of the room like it has every right to be there, burbling away. Perfectly pretty, perfectly deadly. And the whole scene keeps shifting and folding, transforming in these bright kaleidoscopic ways. Colors turning over into other colors, shapes blooming open into other shapes, and then collapsing back down before you've finished looking at them. It never stops rearranging itself. There's no still frame to rest your eye on. It's beautiful and it's a little bit menacing at exactly the same time, which is a balance this show is so good at that you almost stop noticing how rare it is. Most cartoons pick one. They're either bright or they're scary. This one lets the brightness be the scary thing, and the room glows while it tries to get you. And here's the thing that gets me about the lava floor specifically. Read this way, what Jake materializes isn't random surreal noise. It's the game. You know the game. Every kid has played it. The floor is lava, the carpet is safe, the couch is an island, and you leap from cushion to cushion with total seriousness, because falling means you lose. Rainy Day Daydream takes that exact childhood game and makes it literal. The floor genuinely is lava now. The stakes you pretended to feel are now the stakes you actually feel. And what this suggests, I think, is the real reason the episode feels like a dream you personally had rather than a cartoon you watched. It's built out of a thing your own imagination already did to your own living room when you were small. The show didn't invent the feeling. It just turned the volume all the way up and forgot to turn it back down. I should be honest about something here. The first time it really clicked for me, I was half asleep on a couch, which might be the perfect state to receive it. And that drowsy in-between feeling is exactly the place we're trying to get to tonight. So, if this slow, warm walk through strange cartoons is doing something nice for you, a quiet little subscribe is a kindness to whoever you are at 2 in the morning next week looking for the same thing again. There, back to the rain. Because the episode doesn't just throw images at you and call it a day, it gives the chaos a mechanism, and the mechanism is the detail I keep turning over. There's a machine in this episode built to turn imagination on and off. A switch, a literal control for the very thing that's flooding the room. And the moment you introduce a machine like that, you've quietly proposed something enormous. Even if the episode is too gentle to make a speech about it. You've proposed that imagination is a thing that can be running or not running, a current that flows until something interrupts it. The mind has an on position and an off position, and somebody, somewhere, built the switch. The show implies, with that machine, an idea I find almost unbearably relatable. Think about the version of you that lies awake at 3 in the morning. The thoughts won't stop manifesting. One worry summons the next, and the next pulls a whole scene up out of the dark, fully furnished, and suddenly you're living inside something that isn't even happening. Read this way, the on and off machine is the wish that anxious version of you has had 1,000 times. A switch, just a switch, somewhere on the back of your own head that you could reach up and click to off, so the floor would stop being lava for one night and the room could go back to being a room. Rainy Day Daydream hands its characters that exact switch, plainly, like it's no big deal. And there's something deeply comforting about a story that treats the runaway mind as a piece of hardware, a problem with a button, not a character flaw, not something wrong with you, just a system that's currently switched on and could, in principle, be switched off. I find that idea genuinely soothing, honestly. More soothing than it has any right to be from a children's cartoon about a boy and his dog. And then, right in the middle of all this, the episode does something so small and so silly that I have to describe it carefully, because if I rush it, it turns into a punchline, and it isn't a punchline. There's a fairy, and the fairy needs to activate a hyperspace effect, some leap through the fabric of the scene, and she presses the hyperspace button with her buttocks. That's it. That's the moment. She sits on the button, she backs up to it and presses it with her behind, completely matter-of-fact, no wink, no nudge, no music sting telling you to laugh. And in any other show, that would be a gag with a setup and a payoff. Here it just happens the way the most genuinely dreamlike things happen. with this serene internal logic where of course that's how you press the button. Why are you even asking? It's gentle nonsense, the kind your sleeping brain produces all the time and never once questions. A tiny, absurd beat that floats by and is gone, and the episode never circles back to point at it. I love that they trusted it to just exist. So much of what makes this show feel like a dream is that it refuses to explain its own strangeness. A fairy pressing a button with her buttocks doesn't get a reason. The poison fountain doesn't get an origin story. The lava floor doesn't get a rule sheet. They simply are the way the contents of a dream simply are, and you accept all of it while you're inside it, and only blink at it later. Which brings me to a question the episode quietly refuses to answer, and I want to flag this clearly as something nobody official has settled. Fans have theorized about it, and nothing official confirms one way or the other. The question is whether the things Jake imagines are objectively, genuinely real inside the world of the episode, or whether the whole thing is a kind of shared hallucination running between two friends. Is the lava actually there, governed by real physics that just happen to be invisible to Finn? Or is it more like a waking dream the two of them are somehow caught inside together, where the danger is real because they both believe in it? The episode doesn't draw that line for you. It lets the floor be lava and lets you decide what that even means. And honestly, the not knowing is part of why it sits so well at the edge of sleep. You don't have to resolve it. You can just let it hover. Here's the larger idea I want to plant for the rest of the night, because Rainy Day Daydream is really the first card in a deck we're going to keep turning over. The invisible to Finn trick isn't only a clever way to stage some comedy, read it as a small statement about other people. Every single person you love is, like Jake, walking through a vivid inner world you cannot see. Their fears, the scenes they replay, the things that feel like lava to them while you're just standing on the carpet wondering why they're being careful. We navigate each other's imaginations blind. We're all Finn, crossing rooms that are perfectly safe to us and quietly dangerous to the person beside us. And we mostly never know. We can't see the lava they're stepping around. We just see them stepping strangely and wonder why. The show implies that, I think, without ever stopping to say it out loud, which is exactly why it lands instead of preaching. It trusts a half-asleep audience to feel the idea instead of being told it. And that's the pattern for tonight, the shape under all of these episodes. Each one is going to hand the characters a different way for reality to come unfastened. Tonight, it's a daydream that turns solid and invisible, a room rebelling against one boy while sparing the other. Later, it'll be other mechanisms entirely, other doors, other ways the floor stops being a floor. But it starts here with the simplest version: boredom on a rainy day, and a mind that can't help but fill the silence. And the filling becomes the danger. That's the engine. Reality comes loose, and we follow the characters through the loosening, slowly, with the lights low. Let me give you one last thing about this episode, because it explains a lot. Pendleton Ward, who created the show, named Rainy Day Daydream his favorite episode of Season 1. His favorite, out of that entire first stretch of the show finding its feet. And once you know that, the episode reads differently. Because on the surface, it's a story about two friends curing their boredom. And the cure goes wrong, and the boredom becomes something with teeth. But sit with why a creator would love this one most, and a second story comes up underneath. It's secretly a story about the sheer power of imagination, about the fact that a bored mind, given nothing to do on a gray afternoon, can generate an entire dangerous world out of pure nothing. Lava, creatures, a poison fountain, a switch to control it all, a fairy with her own serene physics. None of it was there, and then a dog got bored, and all of it was there, vivid enough to nearly hurt somebody. Read that way, the episode isn't really warning you about imagination. It's quietly in awe of it. It's saying that the thing inside your head, the thing that turns a living room into a lava field and a carpet into the only safe ground, isn't a small thing or a childish thing. It's a force. It's strong enough to remake a room, and a story about boredom curing itself by becoming dangerous is really a story about how much power we keep folded up inside us, idle, waiting for a rainy day to set it loose. No wonder it was his favorite. It's the show admitting, early and gently, what it secretly is. So Jake's imagination only redecorates the room he's already standing in. But the next episode asks a far stranger question. What happens when a daydream doesn't just fill a room, but swallows a man whole and gives him an entire lifetime inside it. And so we drift now toward Puhoi, the lifetime lived inside a pillow fort, and the old Tang Dynasty story sleeping underneath it. And now I can finally take you to the door I promised you, the small one, the one a person can crawl through and not come back from for 50 years. I've been holding this one back on purpose because, if I'm honest with you, it's the one I think about most when the lights are off and the room has gone quiet. We're going to sit with an episode called Puhoi from Season 5, the 16th one, and it first aired back in the spring of 2013. And I want to be upfront with you before we even step through the doorway. Of all the strange, dreaming, reality-foldy episodes we're drifting through tonight, this is the one I'd hand to someone who'd never seen the show and say, here, this is the whole thing. This is what it does when it's at its best and at its most quietly devastating. So I'm putting it early, near the front of the night, on purpose. The strongest material first, while you're still settling in, before you drift too far. Because this one deserves your attention even if you only catch it with one ear, half asleep, the way you might be right now. And honestly, there's a reason it belongs here and not later. The episodes we're drifting toward after this get tangled and frightening and loud in their own quiet way. This one is the opposite. It's the calm at the center. It's the one that earns its strangeness by being tender about it, and I'd rather give it to you now while the room is still than save it for when you're already deep under and might let it slip past you. I'll also say this because it matters for how you hear the rest. A lot of people, when they list the trippy episodes of this show, reach first for the ones full of monsters and screaming and warped faces, and we'll get there. But the strangest thing this show ever did wasn't loud at all. A boy crawls into a pile of cushions and lives and dies and comes back, and nobody raises their voice the whole time. The reality bending here doesn't come at you with sharp edges. It comes at you softly, the way real sleep does, the way the floor of a dream gives out from under you without a sound, and you only notice you've fallen once you've already landed somewhere else entirely. Let me set the scene for you gently, because the way it begins is so small, so ordinary, that you'd never guess where it's about to go. It's a rainy day again, funnily enough. The weather in this show loves to trap people indoors and let their minds wander. And here it does it one more time. Finn and Jake are stuck inside, and there's some quiet trouble in the air between Finn and his girlfriend at the time, a low background ache of not feeling quite wanted, not feeling quite enough. And to deal with all of that the way a kid does, Finn does the most human thing imaginable. He builds a pillow fort, a truly enormous one. Cushions and blankets stacked into tunnels and rooms, the kind of fort you and I probably built as children on a gray afternoon when there was nowhere to go. And then he crawls inside. He goes deeper into it than seems possible. He keeps crawling through one soft chamber and into the next, the light getting dimmer and warmer, until the fort stops feeling like a fort at all. I want you to feel how slow and ordinary that is, because the show really takes its time with it. There's no flash, no portal opening with a burst of light, no music swelling to tell you that magic is happening. It's just a kid moving through cushions on his hands and knees, the way you might have done as a child. The way maybe you did this very thing once, building a little dark, warm world out of the couch, and crawling so far in that the living room behind you went quiet and far away. That's the genius hiding in plain sight here, and I mean that without using the show's name for it. It picks the single most familiar, most harmless thing a child can do on a rainy afternoon, and it uses that as the doorway out of reality. No spell, no chosen, one nonsense. Just a fort and a boy who didn't know when to stop crawling. And I think most of us, somewhere deep down, half believe that forts work like that. That if you crawled far enough into the dark, soft middle of one, the world might just keep going. Children believe it completely. Adults pretend they've stopped. This episode quietly sides with the children. And here's the door I promised. Somewhere in the depths of all those pillows, he crawls through one more small opening, and he comes out the other side into a whole world. Not a room, a world. A soft, muted, pillow-colored land stretching out in front of him, with its own pale sky and its own gentle horizon, populated by people who are themselves made of pillows and cushions, living quiet little lives. Finn stands up in this place, and he's just a boy who crawled too far into his own fort. And the pillow people gather around him, and they don't see a lost child. They see someone who has arrived. Let that land for a second, because it's such a gentle, disorienting thing. He doesn't burst in as a hero. He doesn't crash through the sky with a sword. He sort of arrives the way you arrive in a dream, already halfway into a situation you don't remember starting. The Pillow People are calm about him. They're soft in every sense, soft-bodied and soft-voiced and unbothered. Like they've been expecting someone and he's simply the someone who came. And the world itself has this muted, washed-out palette. All dusty pastels, like a memory of a place rather than a place. Like a photograph left too long in the sun. Nothing about it is sharp. Nothing about it is urgent. It's the visual texture of being half asleep, rendered as a country you can walk around in. And here's the small thing that quietly breaks my heart on a rewatch. Finn arrives carrying that little ache from home, that feeling of not being quite wanted, not being quite enough. And the very first thing this soft world does is want him. It takes him in without question. Of course he stays. Wouldn't you if you crawled out of a hard day and into a place that simply, gently wanted you there? I get a little emotional even describing it, and I want to slow right down here. Because what happens next is the heart of everything. And it happens so calmly that it's easy to miss how enormous it is. He stays, that's the simplest way to put it. He doesn't find the exit, he doesn't spend the episode frantically searching for a way home the way you'd expect an adventure cartoon to play it. He just gently stays. The Pillow People take him in, and he takes a new name. He becomes Shermie, and then the show does something almost no children's cartoon would ever dare to do. It lets him live there. Not for an afternoon, not for an adventure, for a life. Let me trace it for you the way the episode traces it. Quietly, without panic, because the calmness is the whole point. As Shermie, he meets someone and he falls in love. Real love, the settled kind, not a cartoon crush. He marries her, they build a home together in the soft country, and they have children, a son and a daughter, named Jay and Bonnie. And I want you to actually picture that. Picture this boy who crawled into a pile of cushions on a rainy afternoon, now a young father, holding his own kids, watching them grow. And he does watch them grow. The years go by. He goes from a young man to a man in his middle years, settled and a little tired and deeply content. The way people get when a life has filled in around them. His children grow up and leave to live their own lives the way children do, and the house gets quieter. His hair grays. His back bends. The energy of the young man becomes the stillness of the old one. He becomes an old man in a rocking chair. The whole arc of a human existence laid out in a soft pastel country inside a fort. And at the very end of all those decades, surrounded by the quiet of a long life lived, Shermie dies. Of old age, peacefully. An old man closing his eyes for the last time. And I keep coming back to how unbothered the show is by all of this. How it doesn't treat any of it as a tragedy while it's happening. It treats it as a life. The marriage isn't a plot twist. The kids aren't a gag. The aging isn't played for laughs. It's just allowed to be what it is. Slow and full and ordinary and precious. The way your own life is slow and full and ordinary and precious while you're inside it and not thinking about how it ends. We watch a man we met as a boy become a husband, a father, an old man, and the camera, if you can call it that in a cartoon, just stays gentle and patient the whole way through. Like it loves him. Like it's sitting up late with him too. There's something almost unbearable about watching a whole life compressed like that, isn't there? Because it shows you the shape of the thing. A beginning at one end, a closing of the eyes at the other, and in between, the people you find and hold and lose. We never get to see our own lives in that shape. We're too far inside them. Puhoi lets you stand outside one for a few minutes and watch it round itself off, and it does it so tenderly that you almost don't notice it's also very quietly showing you yours. I have to just sit here for a second, because that's a lot. That's a man's entire life, beginning to end, childhood sweetheart to grandchildren to deathbed. And the show gives it to you with this gentle, unhurried tenderness, like it's the most natural thing in the world to watch a boy grow old and die inside a blanket fort. And then comes the part that genuinely takes my breath away every time, the part that makes this the purest sleep parable the show ever made. Because the moment he dies as old Shermie, he wakes. He's Finn again. He's a boy again crawling back out of the pillow fort into the treehouse. And here's the devastation, said as softly as I can say it. In the real world, Almost no time has passed at all, just minutes. Jake is right there, the rain is still falling, the afternoon hasn't even really moved. A whole human lifetime, 50, 60, 70 years of love and children and growing old. And out here, it was the length of a yawn. And Finn remembers none of it. That's the part that gets me. He climbs out of the fort, and there's nothing. No wife, no Jay, no Bonnie. No memory of the decades, no grief, no warmth, no trace. The entire life he lived, the people he loved, the children he raised, all of it gone the instant he came back through the door, like it never happened at all. He just goes back to his day. I have to slow all the way down here because I think this is the quiet center of the whole night, and I don't want to rush past it. Think about it from the inside for a moment. Somewhere, from Shermie's point of view, he was an old man, content, near the end, having lived a complete and ordinary and loving life. And then, in a single instant, all of that is simply unmade. Not ended. Unmade. The wife he spent decades beside, gone, as if she was never real. The 2 children he raised from nothing, gone. Every quiet morning, every argument, every birthday, every ordinary Tuesday of an entire marriage, gone. And the strangest part, the part that makes my chest tighten, is that Finn doesn't even feel the loss. You can't grieve what you don't remember. He doesn't climb out heartbroken. He climbs out blank. The grief is all ours, sitting out here watching. He carries none of it, and there's something almost merciful and almost horrifying in that at the same time, and I genuinely can't decide which. Because here's the thing, from the real world side, nothing was lost. It was minutes. But from inside the pillow, everything was lost. An entire existence wiped clean. Both of those are true at once, and that doubling, a thing being nothing and everything depending on which side of the door you stand on, is the feeling this whole episode runs on. Read this way that forgetting is the most honest thing about the whole episode. Because think about what actually happens to you almost every single night. You live through something vast and complete and emotionally real inside a dream. You cry in it sometimes, you love people in it, you live whole hours and days in there. And then you open your eyes, and within seconds, it's draining out of you like water through your fingers. And by the time you've had your first thought of the morning, it's mostly gone. Finn losing the pillow life the moment he returns is exactly that, scaled up. It mirrors the way we lose nearly every dream within seconds of waking, no matter how full and finished and lived in it felt while we were inside it. The show implies, very quietly, that this is just what minds do. We live elsewhere, and then we come back, and the door closes behind us, and we don't even know it was open. If you're enjoying this, if this is the kind of slow late-night company you actually want more of, it would genuinely mean a lot to me if you stuck around and subscribed. Because these quiet ones, the ones about dreams and growing old in soft places, are exactly what I love making for you. That's it. That's the whole ask. Now let me crawl us back into the fort, because there's more here than just the story. I want to bring in something that I find genuinely beautiful, because it tells you this dream is far older than the cartoon. The structure of Puhoy, a person living an entire lifetime inside a magical object and then waking moments later, isn't something the writers spun out of nothing. It comes directly from a Chinese story that's around 1300 years old, from the Tang Dynasty, written by a man named Shen Jiji, and it's called The World Inside a Pillow. And the bones of it are almost exactly what you just watched. A man lies down on a special pillow, and inside it he lives a long and full life, success and family and old age, decades of it, and then he wakes up and barely any time has passed at all. The same shape, the same lesson, a whole existence folded into a nap. And I find that almost unbearably lovely, and a little eerie, if I'm honest, because here's a story that humanity wrote down more than 1,000 years ago, long before television, long before any of us, and then it surfaces again in a candy-colored cartoon made for kids in the 21st century, wearing pillows instead of a pillow, but telling the identical truth. What this suggests to me is that this particular dream, the long life lived in a single instant, is one of those stories the human race just keeps needing to tell itself, over and over, across centuries and languages, because something in it is true in a way we can never quite finish saying. We forget it, and then we remember it, and then we write it down again. A 1,300-year-old tale crawling into a children's show is its own kind of door, isn't it? The same idea coming back through after 50 years, after 1,000. And think about the chain of hands that story passed through to reach Finn's pillow fort. Shen Ji wrote it down, and then it survived. It got copied and retold and carried across more than 1,000 years and halfway around the world, surviving every century that could have lost it, until it landed in front of a few cartoon writers who looked at this ancient thing about a whole life lived in a nap and thought, yes, let's make Finn do that. The same dream, handed forward, hand to hand across 13 centuries, like a candle passed from room to room, so it never quite goes out. I find that genuinely moving. We don't carry useless things that far. And the bit that gives me a small shiver every time is how little the centuries changed it. The setting moved, the magical object changed shape, the man became a boy, but the core stayed perfectly intact. A full life lived inside something small, and awaking just moments later. The cartoon doesn't preach the lesson, it just lets you feel it, the same way the old story did, the smallness of a life held up against the bigness of how it felt to live it. And it isn't the only old story standing behind this one. There are a couple of other echoes that people have pointed out, and they're worth a quiet mention because once you see them, you can't unsee them. The way Finn enters, crawling through a small opening into somewhere impossibly larger, that small door entrance calls straight back to Alice in Wonderland, to a child finding a little doorway and going through into a world that does not obey the rules of the one she left. And the other one, the deeper one for me, is the idea of stepping through a doorway into another world, and aging inside it, living years and years in there, which is the exact ache at the center of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Children walk through the back of a wardrobe, grow up entirely in the world beyond it, become kings and queens, live long full lives, and then stumble back through and they're small children again with no time having passed. That's Puhoi. That's Shermie. The wardrobe, the pillow, the magic pillow from the Tang Dynasty, they're all the same door, and we keep building it in our stories because we keep walking through it in our sleep. And notice how each version handles the coming back, because that's where they differ in a way that tells you something. In the wardrobe story, the children come home to a single moment, no time passed, but they remember everything, the whole lifetime they lived through, and they carry the ache of it. Finn does the opposite. He comes home to a single moment too, but he keeps nothing. The memory is wiped, and I think that difference is exactly why Puhoi feels less like a fantasy and more like an honest little model of sleep. Because the wardrobe is a wish, isn't it? The wish that you could live another whole life somewhere wonderful and bring all of it back with you. Finn's version is the truth. You do go somewhere. You do live something. And then you wake, and it's gone, and you don't even get to keep the grief. That's not a fairy tale. That's just Tuesday morning for all of us. So when I line them up, the little doorway from Alice, the aging in another world from the wardrobe, the lifetime in an object from the Tang Dynasty, what I see isn't a cartoon borrowing cleverly. I see one very old human ache wearing different costumes. The ache of suspecting that this, right here, the bed, the dark, the body, might not be the only room we live in. Now I want to mention one more thing, and I want to be careful and precise about how I say it, because it's easy to overstate. When Finn finally dies as old Shermie, the visuals of that death, the way the episode renders the actual moment of passing, gets strange and abstract and overwhelming. There's imagery of him bouncing off the tongue of a vast cosmic creature, the entity the show calls Golb, this swirling, geometric, otherworldly cascade of color and shape. And it's been widely observed by people who make this kind of art and by fans who study the show closely that those death visuals strongly resemble the sort of hallucinations people describe from certain altered states, the deep, geometric, dimension-dissolving kind. I'm describing that to you purely as a noted visual observation, the way the imagery looks and what it's been compared to. I'm not telling you the show is making any claim or endorsing anything, because it isn't, and the sources don't say it is. It's just that the artists reached for a visual language of total dissolution to show a soul leaving one world, and that language happened to look like the one certain travelers come back trying to describe. Make of that what you will. At the edge of sleep, it lands as simply the look of a mind coming untethered. And here's where I want to just rest with you for a moment. Because under all of it, the pillows and the pillow from China and the wardrobe and the strange cosmic death, there's one paradox sitting at the center. And it's the most sleep-appropriate idea I know. A full human life can feel like a single night's dream, and a single night's dream can feel like a whole life. Those two things are the same sentence read in two directions, and Puhoi lives in the exact spot where they meet. Shermie's decades were Finn's few minutes. And how many times have you woken from a nap that felt like 10 seconds only to find an hour gone? Or surfaced from a dream that felt like days and learned you'd been under for 40 minutes? Time doesn't keep its promises once you're inside. The wall between living a life and dreaming one is so thin that this episode just walks straight through it without even raising its voice. And I find that thought, strangely, one of the most comforting things I know to lie down with. You'd think it would be frightening, the idea that a whole life could be no longer than a nap, that everything you're carrying could turn out to weigh about as much as a dream. But late at night, with the lights off, it lands the other way around for me. If a single night's dream can hold an entire lifetime, then there's a kind of vastness folded up inside even the smallest stretch of rest. The few hours of sleep in front of you tonight aren't nothing. They could be enormous in there. You could live whole afternoons, meet people who don't exist, grow old in a country with no name, and surface having missed only a little of the dark. There's room in there, more room than the clock could ever tell you. That's why this works as something to fall asleep to, and not just something to think about. It takes the thing that might keep you up, the smallness of a life, the speed of it, and it turns it gently over until you're looking at the other face of it, the bigness of a single night. Same coin held to the light differently at 2 in the morning than you would at noon. Some people take that even further, and I'll flag this clearly as a reading rather than anything the show ever confirms. There are fans and critics who see Puhoi as quietly brushing up against Buddhist ideas, thoughts about consciousness, about how the self might just be a story we briefly inhabit, about attachment and how we cling to lives and people who were never quite as solid as they felt. That's an interpretation found in some fan analyses. Nothing in the show says it out loud, so hold it loosely. And there's an even more basic uncertainty I want to be honest about. One I'll carry forward with us through the rest of tonight. It is genuinely unclear, even in the careful write-ups, whether that pillow world was a dream Finn dreamed or a real separate dimension he actually crossed into and out of. The episode doesn't tell you. Maybe Shermie was imagined. Or maybe, somewhere, there's a soft pastel country where an old man really did live and love and die, and a wife who really did lose him, and 2 grown children, Jay and Bonnie, who really are out there somewhere, missing a father who woke up one day as a boy in a treehouse and forgot they ever existed. I don't know which is worse. I don't know which is more beautiful. The show lets both be true at once, and at 2 in the morning, drifting, I think that uncertainty is exactly the right place to lie down in. But notice what Puhoi still keeps at arm's length, even as it walks us through a whole life and out the other side. It lets the dream be soft. It lets the dream be kind, mostly, a long, gentle existence in a warm country. The fear stays at the edges. It never quite climbs inside the dream and starts wearing it. And that's the next door I want to take you through, because the show isn't always this tender with what it finds in the dark. That's where King Worm comes in. The nested dream where the fears don't stay politely at the edges but leak right out of the navel and start rearranging the people you love. From a dream, you could grow old inside, slow and soft and almost kind. I want to move you now into one that never holds still long enough to trust. Where the pillow fort gave you a whole quiet lifetime to settle into, this next room won't let you settle into anything. The floor keeps changing. The walls keep changing their minds about being walls. We're leaving the longest, most lived-in dream the show ever made and walking straight into the most unstable one. The one that's built, on purpose, to come apart in your hands the second you reach for it. This is King Worm, Season 4, Episode 18, first aired in the late summer of 2012, and it's the one where the dreaming stops being gentle and starts being slippery. Here's the setup, and I'll keep it simple, because the episode itself works hard not to. There's a creature called King Worm. He's a parasite, and what he does, his whole trick, is that he hypnotizes Finn and Jake and pulls them down into a dreamscape. Not a single dream. A stack of them, false reality on top of false reality, each one looking solid enough to walk around in, until it quietly turns out to be another floor that won't hold your weight. And I think that's the thing to hold on to before we go in, because it's the thing that makes this one feel so different from the others tonight. A normal dream lies to you once. It shows you a world and says, here, this is real, believe it. King Worm lies to you and then lies again about the lie. You climb out of one false room and you're standing in another false room that's just as convincing as the first. And the dread of it, if you can call something this gentle dread, is that you stop being able to count how many doors you've come through. You lose the thread of how deep you are, which honestly is a feeling I know well from the wrong side of 2 in the morning when you wake up and get up and pour the cereal and then actually wake up and realize the first waking was part of the dream too. And then for a second, you're not even sure about this one. You give the room a little test. You press your hand flat on the wall, or you look at the clock twice to see if the numbers stay put, because some sleepy part of you has learned not to trust the first answer anymore. That's the texture King Worm is going for. Layers. A trapdoor under the trapdoor. Every time Finn and Jake think they've reached solid ground and shaken the dream off, the ground turns out to be one more painted floor, with another fall waiting underneath it. Anyway, that's the architecture. A dream you can't find the bottom of, built so that finding the bottom was never going to be the way out. So let me walk you through what it actually looks like in there, slowly, because the look of this one is half the point. The geometry is wrong. Not loud wrong, not frightening, just quietly, persistently off. The way things are off in a dream when you don't notice until later. Characters hang upside down and carry on talking as though that's the normal way to stand. Objects float, untethered, drifting through the air with no particular hurry and no reason anybody bothers to give. A scene will be happening, an ordinary little scene, and then it just folds like a sheet of paper creasing in the middle, and the fold opens onto a completely different scene that was apparently always behind it. You think you're in a room, and the room turns out to have been a curtain, and behind the curtain is another room you'll never get to finish looking at either. Things sit at the wrong scale. A face leans in too close, or a familiar figure is suddenly the wrong size for the space they're standing in, and the dream just shrugs and keeps going. Nobody reacts, nobody points at any of it and says, "That's strange." In the dream, it isn't strange. In the dream, it's just Tuesday. And that flatness, that total lack of alarm from everyone inside the thing, is exactly what makes it land as a real dream rather than a haunted house. A haunted house wants you scared, and it tips its hand. This doesn't. It stays perfectly, eerily calm about its own impossibility, and so do the people in it. Real dreams never tell you you're in one. They never break character. They just keep handing you impossible things with a completely straight face and waiting to see whether you'll notice. And most of the time, while you're under, you simply don't. There's one image in here I want to describe very carefully, very calmly, because out of context it could sound like a lot, and it really isn't. Not the way the show plays it. At a certain point, Finn's fears start to surface, and the way they surface is that water begins to come out of his navel, out of his belly button. Water and then creatures rising up out of that one small point in the middle of his body, the way a spring comes up out of the ground. The show doesn't treat it as horror. It treats it as weather, as something that's simply happening to him, the way rain simply happens. A pressure that has to go somewhere and chooses the oldest opening it can find. His fears aren't chasing him down a hallway, they're just welling up, quietly, from inside and spilling out into the dream, where he finally has to look at them. And read this way, I find that genuinely beautiful, in a strange, soft way, because of where it comes from. The navel is the body's oldest connection point, the very first place you were ever joined to anyone, the knot left over from before you had a single memory of your own. So when the show decides that's where the fear comes out, what this suggests, to me at least, is that anxiety isn't something you picked up along the way, like a bad habit or a hard year. It's something you carried in from before language, before memory, before you were even a separate person. The fear was attached at the same spot the rope was. That's the implication anyway, and it's the kind of thing that only really lands when you're lying still in the dark and your own oldest worries are bobbing a little closer to the surface than they do in daylight. You know how that goes. The small fears wait for the lights to go out. They don't come from anything that happened today. They come from somewhere further down, somewhere with no date on it, and they rise the same quiet way the water rises out of Finn. Not to attack you, just to be seen for a minute before they sink back. The show found a picture for that, and it's a tender one if you let it be. Now, here's the turn, and it's the part that makes King Worm more than just a pretty collapse. To get out, Finn can't fight his way out. There's no monster to punch, not really. Or rather, punching the monster never ends it, because the monster keeps being a different monster. What Finn has to do instead is realize where he is. He has to recognize from inside the dream that it is a dream. That single act of noticing is the whole key. And once he knows it's a dream, the rules change. He learns he can touch the dream's machinery, that he has some say over what the elements do, that the floating and the folding and the upside down logic are all in a sense his now to push against. The dream stops being a place that's done to him and becomes, even just a little, a place he's making. That's lucid dreaming told as plainly as a cartoon has ever told it. And if you've ever had one of those, you know the exact flavor of it. That quiet click in the middle of sleep where some part of you sits up and goes, oh, none of this is happening, and suddenly the air feels different, lighter, like you've been handed a set of keys you didn't know were yours. The moment you know you're dreaming, you stop being only the thing the dream happens to. You become a little the one steering. The walls are still made of nonsense, but now the nonsense answers to you. But knowing isn't enough on its own, and this is the part I keep coming back to. To actually break the realm, to destabilize it enough to climb out, Finn has to confront the fears themselves. He has to turn around and face the subconscious stuff that's been welling up, the things the dream has been dredging out of him this whole time. The dream is held together by his belief in it and by his fear of it, and the way you bring the whole structure down is you stop running and you look right at the thing you've been running from. Confront it, and the false world loses its grip. Stop being afraid of the dream, and the dream can't hold its shape anymore. And that right there is where I want to slow all the way down and name something, because I think it's the quiet rule at the center of this entire episode. Maybe the center of the whole night. You usually only wake once you stop believing the dream is real. That's it. That's the mechanism. Not when the dream gets scary enough, not when you fight hard enough, not when someone shakes you. You wake when the belief lets go. The dream needs you to take it seriously to keep existing. And the instant you don't, the instant some part of you quietly says, none of this is true, the whole thing thins out like fog burning off, and there you are, awake, in your own bed, in your own body again. Read that way, the only escape being to stop believing is a pretty tidy little model of how nightmares actually end. Think about your own. The bad ones don't usually finish because you defeated whatever was in them. They finish the moment some sleepy back corner of your mind goes, wait, this isn't real, and the whole apparatus loses its power over you in the same breath. The terror was only ever rented from your belief. And I think that's an oddly comforting thing to hear as you're drifting off, so let me just say it to you straight, gently, while you're lying there. If something unpleasant comes to find you tonight after you've gone under, it only has whatever power you lend it by believing it. The second you don't, it can't keep you. You're allowed to simply stop believing the bad dream and step out. That's not a trick. That's just how the door works. I have to tell you where the strange look of this episode actually comes from, because it's the kind of detail that makes me love how this show was put together. The visual design of King Worm, all that jarring, absurd, off-balance texture, was inspired by something called YouTube poop. And if you've never heard of it, don't worry, you don't need to go looking. I'll just describe it softly. It's an old internet style of video where people would take some familiar clip and chop it up and loop it and stutter it and rearrange it into deliberate nonsense. The same line repeated until it stopped meaning anything. A face stretched wrong, then held there. A moment caught and bounced back and forth until it turned absurd, until the repetition itself became the joke and the unease all at once. Sound warped slightly out of true. Edits that land a half second too early or too late, so nothing ever quite settles. Glitchy on purpose, broken on purpose. Nonsense built with real care, which is a stranger and more deliberate thing than it sounds. That's the well the artist drew from for the feel of this dream, and once you know that, you can't unsee it. You can see it everywhere in the episode, in the way scenes don't quite resolve before they jump, in the way the whole thing has the rhythm of a clip that's skipping, catching, and skipping again, never letting you get your footing for longer than a beat. And what this suggests, what I find lovely about that choice, is how closely that broken looping texture maps onto the way real dreams behave. Because real dreams do that too, don't they? They loop, they stutter, They hand you the same hallway twice. They cast the wrong people in the wrong roles, your old teacher in your childhood kitchen, a friend wearing a stranger's face. The same fragment of a moment playing again with the edges slightly changed. Dreams reuse their footage. They glitch. So building this episode out of a deliberately glitchy, looping nonsense style wasn't just a gag read this way. It was a fairly precise piece of dreamcraft. They found a visual language that already worked the way sleep works, and they pointed it at a story about sleep. The medium and the dream turned out to be the same shape. Two soft little uncertainties before we drift on, and I'll flag both as exactly that. Things fans turn over rather than things the show ever confirmed. The first is that King Worm turns up again later. A small cameo at the close of another episode, the one called Evicted, and some fans have read that reappearance as a hint that he came back and hypnotized Finn and Jake a second time, that there was another dream we never got to see. Nothing official confirms that. It's a glimpse and a guess, the kind of loose thread this show was always happy to leave hanging. And the second is bigger and stranger. Fans have theorized that the things drifting through Finn's dream here are only fears, that some of them quietly foreshadow what's coming much later in the series. Other timelines, certain creatures, and old enemies return, all supposedly seated right here in the worm's dream. Again, nothing official backs that up, but it's a fun thing to hold loosely as you fall asleep. The idea that a dream could be remembering forward, leaking the future the way the daydream once leaked into the room. So that's the worm's dream. The stacked false floors, the wrong geometry told without alarm, the fears rising up from the oldest knot in the body, and the one quiet door out, which is simply to stop believing any of it is real. Finn doesn't escape by force. He escapes by waking, and he wakes by letting go. And from a dream you have to disbelieve your way out of, I want to take you next somewhere even looser, where a body lies down and stays put and something softer than the body comes free of it and drifts up and out past the ceiling, out past the world, until it dissolves into the long, quiet chain of things that eat and are eaten. After a dream, you can grow old inside, and then a dream that wouldn't sit still no matter how hard you stared at it. I want to do something a little different with you for a while. I want to lift you gently up and out of your own body, just for a stretch. Not far, and not for long, and you can come back anytime you like. But there are 2 episodes I've been saving for exactly this moment, this soft, loosened, half-year place we've drifted into together, and I want to put them side by side, because I think they're secretly about the same thing. They're both about Finn leaving the shape of himself. That's the thread that ties them, even though on the surface they could not look more different. In one of them, he floats right out of his body and hovers there above it. The same boy, the same Finn, just quietly unhooked from his own skin and drifting up over the world like smoke. In the other, he doesn't float out of a body at all. He becomes other bodies, one after another after another after another. A whole long chain of different living things passing through each one like a hand passing through water and coming out the far side as something else entirely. One episode lifts the self up off the body and lets it hang there in the air. The other one pours the self down through every single body it can find, on and on, never resting in any of them. And lying here, sinking slowly into the dark, I honestly can't think of 2 stranger or 2 gentler ways for a person to come loose from themselves. That's the whole reason they belong together tonight. The 2 of them back to back. The float and the flood. Let me take you to the floating one first, because it's the closest thing this whole show ever made to the exact feeling of falling asleep. It's called Astral Plane, Season 6, Episode 25, and it first aired back in January of 2015. And the setup is so simple, it almost feels like an excuse. There's a comet coming. A comet far out in the dark on a long, slow line toward Ooh. And the nearness of it, the strange gravity of the thing, does something to Finn. It knocks something loose in him. His body stays where it is, and the rest of him, the looser part, the part that isn't bones, just rises up and out and starts to drift. That's astral projection if you want the proper name for it. The idea, old as anything, that there's a version of you that can come unhooked from the physical one and go wandering on its own. And the show treats it so calmly, there's no panic in it. Finn doesn't claw at the air or scream to get back in. He just lifts the way a balloon lifts when a child finally opens their fingers, and then he's up there, above himself, above the trees, looking down on the whole quiet world, while his body waits below. And here's the thing I keep coming back to. The reason I held this one for now. Read this way, astral plane is naming a sensation that almost every single person has felt, even if they've never had a word for it. That little lurch right at the threshold of sleep. That feeling just as you're going under, of rising slightly up out of yourself, of the body getting heavy and far away, while some lighter part of you seems to float up off the mattress an inch and a half and hang there in the dark. Maybe you felt it tonight already. That soft untethering. The show built a whole episode out of that one feeling, which makes it just about the most perfect thing I could possibly be describing to a person who's halfway gone. The way you might be right now, I'm narrating the exact thing your body is already trying to do. So let me walk you through what Finn sees up there, slowly, because honestly the floating is the whole point and there's no rush at all to land. Once he's free of himself, he drifts out over that whole candy-colored leftover world, and he starts passing over the private lives of the people down below. He floats over Mr. Fox's house and catches him in a quiet, unguarded moment, the kind of moment nobody is ever supposed to see, the kind of thing a person only does when they're certain they're alone. He drifts on past Bounce House Princess's cave, and he isn't spying, not really, that's the thing. He has no plan up there, he's just weightless, carried along, catching these little unwatched scenes of people simply being themselves when they think no one can possibly be looking. And there's something so tender and so lonely about that all at once, isn't there? To float above everyone you know and love and watch them be soft and small and private, going about their tiny ordinary moments and not be able to touch any of it, not be able to say hello, just drift and see them and move on past, like a breeze that knows things. I think that's a feeling sleep gives us too, sometimes, in those last conscious minutes. That sense of gently rising up above your own life and looking back down at it, at all the people in it, with this strange soft distance, where nothing can be reached anymore and nothing needs to be, where you've set the whole day down at last and you're just hovering over it, watching it go quiet, and he keeps rising. There's no ceiling to this. He floats up and up, past the Cloud Kingdom, that soft white country in the sky, all those castles built out of vapor, and even that isn't the end of it. He keeps going. The blue gives way. He drifts clean off the world and out into space, into the real dark, and he doesn't stop until he reaches Mars, that cold red lonely place hanging out there in the black. And I want you to sit with the size of that for a second. He started in a forest, a boy in a treehouse in a forest, and now he's all the way out at another planet, having simply floated there, the way you float from one corner of a dream into a completely different one without ever feeling yourself cross the distance. From up there, from that enormous height, he can finally see the whole thing, the comet, still coming, drawing its long, slow line in toward everything he just floated over, toward the little houses and the caves and the sleeping ordinary lives. He sees it approaching, the way you sometimes see something coming in a dream, and can't move and can't shout, can only hang there and watch it get nearer and nearer. There's no music swelling to scare you, no alarm, just a boy made of almost nothing, looking back at his whole world from very far away, watching a bright thing fall toward it, completely unable to do a single thing about it but witness. And somehow, that stillness is so much heavier than panic would be. I'll be honest, that's the part that gives me a little chill even now, even at this volume. Not because it's frightening, because of how quiet it is. A boy unhooked from his body, alone at the edge of the solar system, watching a bright thing fall toward home. That's such a strange and beautiful image for a show that started with a kid punching candy monsters. Anyway, let me come back down for a second, because there's something about this one I really want you to have. For all that this is a slow, drifting, deeply philosophical little episode, the kind of thing you'd expect almost nobody to sit still for, it pulled a real crowd. When it aired, Astral Plane was watched by 1.8 million people. 1.8 million. And it landed a Nielsen rating of 0.5 among adults 18 to 49, which, if numbers aren't your thing right now, just means a genuine wave of grown adults tuned in for this. A quiet meditation on leaving your own body, on a kids' network, and nearly 2 million people came to float along with it. I find that oddly moving. that there were that many of us all at once, sitting in the dark watching a boy drift out of himself and not feeling the least bit silly about it. You're in good company, is what I'm saying. People have always wanted to feel this exact untethering. The show just gave them somewhere to do it. And before I move us on, I want to be careful and honest about one piece of this. Because I always am with you. There's a question that hangs over that comet. Some fans have looked at it and theorized that the comet wasn't really a comet at all. That it might have been a spaceship, Martin's spaceship, Finn's lost father, either damaged before it ever hit or maybe even steered in deliberately, piloted down like a falling star. And I want to be clear, nothing official confirms that. It's a theory people have built out of hints and hope, and the way the show loves to bury its sadness deep. Hold it loosely. I only mention it because that ache, the idea that the bright falling thing might be a lost parent coming home the only broken way he can, that ache fits this episode so well, but it isn't settled. Let it stay a maybe. So that's the float. The body lying still and the self rising up off it, drifting over everyone's quiet lives, all the way out to a red planet to watch something fall. And if you're still here with me, still drifting along, eyes mostly closed, I'd love it if you stayed. If this slow nightly wander through strange cartoons and quiet thoughts is the kind of thing that helps you let go and sleep, tapping subscribe is a small way to tell me to keep making them. And I really do read it as a kindness when you do. No pressure either way. You don't even have to open your eyes. Wherever you're listening from, I'm genuinely glad you're here. Now let me take you to the other one, because it does the opposite thing, the exact mirror image of the float. And it does it in a visual language so strange and so lovely that I almost don't have the words for it at this hour. The episode is called Food Chain, Season 6, Episode 7, this one from June of 2014. And it's different from almost anything else the show ever made, for one specific reason. They handed it away. The series brought in an outside director, a Japanese animator named Masaaki Yuasa, a man renowned for surreal, psychedelic animation, work that bends and melts and flows in ways most cartoons would never dare. And Yuasa made it together with his Tokyo-based studio, Science Saru. So for one episode, one single half hour, Adventure Time stopped looking like itself and started looking like somebody else's dream entirely. And read this way, I think that's exactly what makes it feel the way it feels. Handing the episode over to an outside artist like Yuasa let the show briefly dream in a stranger's visual language. And think about how your own dreams work sometimes. How every so often you'll have one that doesn't feel like it came from you at all. The logic is off in a way you'd never have invented. The colors are wrong, or rather they're right, but not yours. Not anything you'd ever have reached for awake. The whole thing feels authored by someone else, some other hand that got into your head while you slept and redecorated it while you weren't looking. You wake up and think, where did that even come from? That wasn't me. That's what Food Chain is. It's Adventure Time being dreamed by another mind, and you can feel the scenes in the very best possible way. The characters you know, Finn and Jake, the same two friends we followed through every other room tonight, except now they're moving through a world that suddenly obeys different rules, has a different texture under everything, a different weight, a different soul. It's them, and it isn't. It's the show, and it isn't. Which is precisely the feeling of your own mind handing you a dream you'd swear you never wrote. And I find a strange comfort in that, honestly. The idea that even a thing as familiar as your own imagination can still surprise you, can still hand you a country you've never seen, made of music that shouldn't fit together and voices bent out of shape, that there's still somewhere new to go, even on the inside, even with your eyes shut. So here's what actually happens, and I'll keep my voice low and slow for it, because it's a lot of transformation and not one bit of it needs to feel fast. Finn and Jake get pulled into the food chain itself, not as a lesson on a chalkboard, not as a diagram with arrows, as an experience, lived from the inside, body after body after body. First they become birds. They lift up off the ground on wings that were never theirs, and you feel the air change, the freedom of it, the way the world drops away beneath a thing that can fly. Then they're brought low, all the way down past everything, down to bacteria, tiny invisible specks, the very floor of the living world, so small the whole idea of a self seems almost funny down there. Then they rise back up again, this time as plants, rooted, green, perfectly still, just standing in one spot drinking light, which is its own slow, strange kind of being alive. The kind that never hurries anywhere. And then caterpillars. Soft, segmented, patient, inching along the length of a single leaf, the whole world narrowed down to one green edge under tiny clinging feet. Up and down the whole chain of living things they go, around and around, getting eaten and then being the one that eats. Dying is one small thing and waking up as another, with no real seam between the deaths, no fear in it, just the next form and the next. Birds, then bacteria, then plants, then caterpillars. The self just keeps shedding one shape and stepping into the next, like changing clothes in a dream where you never quite remember undressing. And the show never once stops to panic about any of it, which is exactly why it works as something to fall asleep to. Each death is just a doorway into being something else. And the sound of it, the sound of it is its own kind of lullaby, if a lullaby can be made entirely out of strangeness. The episode gathers up this impossible mix of music and just lets it wash over everything like water over stones. There's chiptune, those bright little 8-bit video game blips, the sound of an old handheld console. There's Mozart, actual Mozart, all that ordered 18th century elegance. There's bagpipes of all the unlikely things, droning away, and there's psychedelic rock, woozy and swirling. None of it should belong in the same room together, and yet all of it does, the way the most unrelated things somehow all belong together inside a dream, and you never question it until you wake. And when the characters become plants, the visuals tip right over into something openly hallucinogenic. The images start to smear and pulse and breathe. The colors run, and the voices go auto-tuned, bent and pitched and slid around until they barely sound human anymore. This warped, melting underwater sound, like words heard through the wall of sleep. And there's this one small moment I genuinely adore, back when they're birds, where they open their beaks and sing the Queen of the Night aria. If you don't know it by name, you'd know it the second you heard it. It's that soaring, impossible piece of opera, the really famous one, the one that climbs and climbs up into the very top of a singer's range, all the way into the rafters. Except here, it's floating along over a bed of chiptune, grand old opera, and a little 8-bit game console, at the very same time in the throats of two birds. I honestly don't know how to describe the way that lands, except to say it's beautiful, and it's deeply, deeply strange. And it is somehow exactly the right thing to be hearing at 2 in the morning with your eyes closed. And here's what I think it's quietly saying underneath all the color and noise. Read this way: food chain treats the self, the ego, the I, the whole sense of being one particular person, as just one costume. One temporary outfit in a very long parade of living forms. You're a bird for a while, then you're a blade of grass, then you're a small green thing eating a leaf. And none of it is the end of you, because you were never only the one shape to begin with. And I know that could sound frightening if you said it in a bright room in the middle of the day. But here, now, sinking into the pillow, I think it's one of the most peaceful ideas a person can hold. That the body you're lying in is just the one you happen to be wearing tonight. That letting go of it, even a little, even just into sleep, isn't a loss. It's just the next change of costume. The wheel keeps turning, and you're somewhere on it, and that's all right. So look at the pair of them now, side by side, the way I wanted you to from the start. Astral plane and food chain. One sends the self floating up and off the body, light as breath, to drift over the sleeping world and out to a lonely red planet. The other sends the self pouring down through every other body that's alive. Bird and bacteria and plant and crawling thing, around the whole great circle. They look nothing alike. One is hushed and lonely and blue. The other is loud and melting and bursting with color. But underneath, they're the same gentle idea told twice. They're both about the self loosening its grip on a single body. About the quiet relief of not having to be just this, just here, just one shape, all the time. One of them floats above the body. The other one passes through every body there is. And both of them, I think, are really only describing the thing your mind already does, the moment you finally let it go at night. Which brings us, softly, to the last strange country I want to wander into with you. The one where the self doesn't leave a body or change a body, but splits into other lives entirely, where a single wish never made unspools into a whole other Finn, a whole other Jake, and a darkness that was never wished away. Not every strange dream in the show is bright and weightless. Some of them don't lift you up off the bed at all. Some of them are just a quieter world, a heavier one, where one small wish went differently, and you walk into it and slowly realize that everyone you love is still here, only wrong. Rearranged, a little colder, and that I think is a different kind of trippy altogether, and it's where I want to take you now, down a step into the saddest country in this whole show. Because up to now, most of the strangeness we've drifted through has come from inside a mind. Dreams, hallucinations, the body coming loose, colors melting, a stranger's brush dreaming the show for half an hour. The weirdness was all in the seeing, but these next two are different, and I want to be honest with you about that right away, the way I always try to be. The strangeness here doesn't come from how anything looks. The animation is calm. The colors behave. Nothing smears or pulses or bends. The strangeness comes from history itself being rewritten, from a single different choice rippling out across 400 years until the whole world has quietly grown into a different shape. It's surreal the way a memory of your own life can be surreal when you change one thing in it and watch everything downstream go strange. No kaleidoscope. Just a world that almost was. The fans in the show call this place Farm World. And it's worth saying plainly, before we go in, that Farm World is real inside the story. It isn't only a dream somebody's having. It was confirmed to be a genuine alternate timeline, brought into being by Prismo, that pink wish-granting face we drift past elsewhere in the show. So when I say one wish rewrote the world, I mean that literally. Somebody made a wish, and a whole separate Earth budded off from ours and grew. Let me take you to the first one. It's called Finn the Human. Season 5, Episode 1, and it first aired in November of 2012. And here's the wish at the root of all of it. Finn wishes that the Lich, the great skeletal death of this show, the closest thing Ooh has to pure evil, had never existed at all. A clean wish, a good wish even, the kind any of us might make if we were handed the power, to reach back and pluck the worst thing out of the world before it could ever do harm. And the wish is granted. The Lich is unmade, and reality folds itself around the absence and becomes Farm World. But here's what that one good wish actually costs, and it's so quiet and so terrible. Without the Lich, the history of the whole planet runs differently. The Mushroom War, that ancient apocalypse that made Ooh in the first place, plays out another way, and instead of the warm, overgrown candy world we know, the Earth gets frozen over for 400 years. 4 centuries under ice. And when things finally thaw, what's left is this hard, plain frontier world. Farms scratched into cold ground, people just trying to get by, heads down working the thin earth. No candy kingdom, no talking treehouse, no magic to speak of, really. Just weather and labor and the long memory of all that ice. The whimsy drained right out of it. And that's the first thing you feel, even before you meet anybody, just from the look of the place. Our Ooh is a riot of color and impossible biology and things that shouldn't be alive being alive and happy about it. Farm World is gray fields under a wide, pale sky. It feels like the show took its own warmth and quietly turned the dial all the way down, and left it there. And then the show does the thing that breaks my heart a little every time. It shows you the people. The same people, just rearranged by all that lost time. There's Marceline, who we know as a sharp, ageless, eternally young vampire queen. And here she's old, an aged woman, worn down by the long centuries carrying all that frozen history in her body. And there's Simon Petrikov, who in our timeline becomes the Ice King, that tragic, befuddled, lonely figure we've sat with before. And here, in Farm World, he's simply gone, deceased, dead and buried somewhere back in the cold. And Finn himself, our Finn, the boy hero, he's here too, but his arm is gone and there's machinery where it used to be. A mechanically augmented body, a kid grown up hard in a hard world that never had room for adventure. I have to just sit with that for a second, honestly, because that's the part that gets me. It would be one thing to wish away the Lich and land in a world full of strangers that you could shrug off. But Farm World doesn't give you strangers. It gives you everyone you already love, only sadder, only diminished, only marked by a history that ground them down. An old Marceline. A dead Simon. A boy who had to trade pieces of himself away just to survive. Same souls, worse lives. And you carry everything you already know about these people into it. That's the cruel part. You know how young Marceline is supposed to be, how she's supposed to outlast everyone. So seeing her aged lands like a small loss you weren't braced for. You know what Simon was, the gentle, muddled heart of him. So finding him already in the ground stings in a way it never could for a character you just met. The show is using your own love against you, very softly, and it knows it. Worse lives told to a person who remembers the better ones. And read this way, I think Farm World is the saddest kind of strange this whole show ever reached for. It isn't a trip, it's a grief. It's the exact ache of looking at the people in your life and imagining them rearranged by one different turn, one choice made another way long before you were ready to understand it. We floated through psychedelic episodes tonight that felt like joy, like color, like coming loose and laughing about it. This one feels like the opposite of that. It feels like standing in a room you almost lived in, looking at faces you almost kept. There's no bright spinning wheel here, just the long, cold quiet of a world that didn't get to be warm. So let me move us into the second half of it, because the story carries straight on. It's called Jake the Dog, Season 5, Episode 2, and it aired the very same night that same November evening in 2012. The two of them are really one long story split in two, one continuous descent, and this is where it goes darker still. We're still in Farm World, and in our timeline, Jake is Jake, the stretchy golden magic dog, Finn's brother, all warmth and jokes and good sense. But Farm World doesn't have a magic dog. Farm World Jake starts out as just a dog, an ordinary, plain, four-legged farm dog. Nothing special, nothing magic, the kind of dog you'd find asleep on any porch. And then the world does something to him. There's liquid from a mushroom bomb, a leftover from that ancient war, that strange corrupting fluid, and Farm World Jake is exposed to it, and he begins to change. And I'll keep my voice low for this part, because it's a slow and an awful transformation, and it doesn't need to feel fast. This ordinary dog starts to twist. His head changes, lengthens, hollows out, until it becomes something skeletal, a bare dog-like skull of a thing. And his eyes light up that particular green, that sick, glowing, unmistakable green. And if you know the show even a little, your stomach drops, because you know that green. You've seen it before. That's the Lich's green. That's the color of the very thing Finn wished out of existence. It's such a quiet piece of horror when you think about it. No big announcement, no dramatic reveal. Just an ordinary dog on an ordinary cold farm, and a little spilled poison, and then a slow wrongness creeping over a creature that never asked for any of it. The body of something gentle becoming the house of something terrible, 1 inch at a time. And there it is. There's the paradox, folding the whole timeline back on itself at the end. Finn wished the Lich away. That was the whole point. That was the good, clean wish that made this entire frozen world. And the wish worked. It really did unmake the Lich. And then this timeline, left without its great evil, simply reached out and grew a new one, out of an ordinary dog and a puddle of old poison. The very evil that was wished out of being comes crawling back into the world through another door, wearing another body. The timeline loops. The exit becomes the entrance. You cannot, it turns out, get rid of the Lich. You can only change which dog he climbs out of. And read this way, that paradox is saying something so quiet and so true that I almost don't want to say it too loudly at this hour. The wish that removes one monster and grows another is the show telling us gently that you can't edit a life down to only its good parts. You can't reach into the story and pull out only the pain and expect the rest to stay the way you loved it. Pull one dark thread and the whole weave shifts. The evil you delete doesn't vanish, it just finds a new shape, because the darkness was never really a single creature you could wish away. It was woven into the cloth the whole time. Take the Lich out, and the world simply makes another. That's not a punishment. It's just how a life is stitched. The shadow comes with it, or none of it comes at all. Let me be careful and clear with you here, the way I promised at the start, because I don't ever want to oversell a thing. These two episodes are surreal, yes, but they belong slightly apart from the others we've drifted through. The trippiness of the rest came from the eyes, from melting visuals and impossible color and dream logic you could see. Farmworld's strangeness is timeline-based instead. It comes from the bones of the story, from reality having branched, not from anything bending in front of you. So if you came tonight chasing kaleidoscopes, I want you to know these two are a colder, sadder kind of strange, and that's me being straight with you rather than dressing it up. They're not a hallucination, they're a haunting, a what if you can walk around inside. And maybe that's exactly why they fit here this far into the dark, this deep into the night. Because there's a particular way the mind goes when you're lying right at the edge of sleep, isn't there? It doesn't always reach for the bright, impossible dreams. Sometimes, in that loosened drifting place, it reaches for regret instead. It goes back to the one choice. The single fork in the road, the thing you said or didn't say, the turn you took or didn't take, and it plays the other version, the farm world of your own life. The timeline where you wished one thing away and woke up in a colder world wearing a body that had to grow hard to survive it. I think alternate timelines work on a falling asleep mind the way regret does, exactly that way, replaying the one decision that might have made everything different, turning it over and over in the quiet. And that loops us right back to the question I keep carrying through all of this, the one underneath the whole night. If the wall between waking and dreaming is as thin as this show keeps insisting it is, then what is an alternate timeline really? Except a dream the universe had about itself. A what if the cosmos rolled over and murmured in its sleep. Prismo grants a wish, and a whole world buds off and grows cold, and grows people, and grows a new evil out of an old dog. And it's all just reality drifting off for a moment into one of its other lives. We do the same thing every night. We lie here and let some other version of the day, the year, the whole life, rise up and play itself out behind our eyes. Farm world is only that, made solid. The universe dreaming, the way you're about to. Which carries us, softly, toward the last places I want to wander with you. The ones where we stop asking what the dreams are and start asking, who's doing the dreaming, the minds behind the curtain, and the last dreamer waiting at the end of the chain. There is one last question I left lying in the dark with you at the very start of the night, and I want to come back and lie down next to it now, here at the end, while everything is quiet. In a show this full of dreams folded inside dreams, how do you ever really know whose dream you're in? Because we've spent all this time tonight drifting through other people's heads, haven't we? Jake's daydreams? Marceline's memories? Whole timelines butting off a single wish. And underneath every one of them, there's been this small, soft, nagging thing I never quite said out loud. If all of this is a dream, then somebody somewhere is the one doing the dreaming. And I want to spend these last few minutes gathering up the strangest of those somebodies, the last handful of reality benders in this show, and using them to finally pay that question off. Gently, the way you'd set something down on a nightstand before you turn the lamp off. So let me start inside a mind, because that feels right. Let me take you into Marceline's. The episode is called Memory of a Memory, Season 3, Episode 3, and it first aired in July of 2011. And the look of it is one of my favorite quiet, strange images in the whole series. Finn and Jake go inside Marceline's mind. Not metaphorically. Inside it. And the way the show draws the inside of a mind is this vast, endless black void. A darkness with no floor and no ceiling, and Finn and Jake moving through it as paper white silhouettes. Just flat white cutouts of themselves, like little shapes scissored out of the dark, drifting through nothing. And floating in that nothing are the memories. They're held in orbs, glowing spheres of remembered things, hanging in the black, and you can move up to one and look inside and watch a moment from her life play out, held there like something under glass. And here's the part that gets me, the part that makes it more than a clever set piece. They go deeper. They find what the show calls memory cores. And inside the memories, there are more memories. Memories nested inside memories. You open one moment, and inside that moment there's another, smaller, older one folded up. And inside that one there could be another still. It's recursive. It goes down and down, and the studios behind the show actually acknowledge this one as being Inception-like. And the episode was influenced by Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. That film about a man walking through his own memories of a love as they're being erased around him, trying to hide the good ones somewhere deeper so they can't be taken. So this isn't me reaching. The people who made it were thinking about exactly this, about the strange architecture of remembering, about a mind as a place with rooms inside rooms. And I'll be honest, I find this one of the loveliest things this show ever did at this hour because of what it's quietly saying. Read this way, memory of a memory turns remembering itself into a place, a landscape you can walk through, a void full of softly glowing rooms you can drift between. And that is so close to what your own mind is actually doing right now, at this exact moment, as it powers down towards sleep. It's wandering its own archive. It's drifting from orb to orb, a face from this afternoon, a smell from a childhood kitchen, some half-remembered song, all of it hanging in the dark with no particular order. One memory opening onto an older one folded up inside it. That's not a dream yet. It's the doorway to one. It's the mind loosening its grip on the day and starting to float through everything it's holding. And the show drew that. It drew the inside of your head at 2 in the morning, and it made it look like a calm black sea full of little lights. And I think that's a beautiful thing to picture as you go under. And sit with the image of those two paper white shapes for one more second, because there's a tenderness in it I don't want to rush past. Finn and Jake aren't drawn in full color when they're inside her. They're emptied out. Just outlines, just the shape of a person, blank white against all that black. And maybe that's the right way to draw anyone who walks into someone else's memories. You go in faded. You go in quiet, more like a held breath than a body. You're not really yourself in there, you're a visitor in a place that was never built for you, drifting past moments that belong to someone you love, careful not to disturb them. I find that so gentle. The idea that to enter another person's remembering, you have to go in soft, almost transparent, almost not there at all, which honestly is also how you move through your own memories on the way down into sleep. Lightly, as a shape, not a self. Let me take you somewhere stranger though, because the next one doesn't go inward into memory. It goes outward and up, until the scale of it gets almost frightening, except the show keeps it gentle. The episode is called The Real You, Season 2, Episode 15, and it aired in February of 2011. And in it, Finn puts on a pair of glasses, the glasses of Nerdicon. And the moment he puts them on, he becomes impossibly intelligent, his mind opening on to four-dimensional space. He sees a tesseract, which is the four-dimensional version of a cube, a shape that can't really exist in our world. A cube nested somehow inside and through another cube, folding in directions there aren't names for. And then it goes further, and he watches it collapse into a black hole. A boy in a cartoon standing there in a pair of joke glasses, looking straight into geometry that the human eye was never built to hold. And the way the show stages the bigness of it, this is the detail I love. The zoom-out sequences were inspired by a documentary short from 1968 called Powers of 10. If you've never seen it, it's this short film that starts on a couple having a picnic, and then the camera pulls back, and keeps pulling back 10 times farther every few seconds, until the picnic is the city, and the city is the continent, and the continent is the Earth. And the Earth is a blue dot, and the dot is the solar system, and on, until our whole galaxy is just a smudge in a much larger dark. And then it reverses and falls all the way back in, down past the skin into a cell, into an atom. That's the feeling the real you reaches for. That vertiginous, calm, almost wholly pulling back. The sense of the scale just opening and opening underneath you. I have to admit, that's a strange thing to put in a kid's show about a boy and a magic dog. But this show was never really only a kid's show, was it? And read this way, what the real you does is take the same nesting idea from Marceline's memories and turn it inside out. In her mind, you fell inward, room inside room, getting smaller. Here you fall outward, the picnic inside the city, inside the world, inside the galaxy, getting bigger, same shape, same dolls inside dolls, just pointed the other direction. And both of them, the inward one and the outward one, leave you with this loosened, floating, slightly dissolved feeling. The feeling of being one small nested thing inside something much larger that you can't see the edges of, which again is not a bad feeling to drift off inside of. It's the feeling of being held by something enormous and not minding. Okay, let me slow down, let me bring us back from the edge of the universe, because the next one is smaller and sadder and very human. The episode is called Fiona and Cake, Season 3, Episode 9, and it aired in September of 2011. And on its surface, it's a delight. Honestly, it's one of the most beloved things the show ever did. It drops you into a whole alternate ooh where everyone's gender is swapped. Finn the human boy becomes Fiona, a human girl with the same bravery and the same sword. Jake the dog becomes Cake the cat. Princess Bubblegum becomes a prince. The Ice King becomes an Ice Queen. The whole candy world flipped and recast, and at first, it just plays like a fun what if, a sideways look at the same beloved place. But then, right at the end, the show pulls the rug, and it pulls it so softly. You find out this whole alternate world wasn't real at all, not even as a timeline. It was fan fiction. It was a story the Ice King wrote. He made it up, this gender-swapped ooh, he wrote it down, and the episode you've just watched turns out to be him reading it aloud. Reading his story out loud to a captured Finn and Jake who he's trapped so that somebody, anybody, will sit and listen to the thing he made. And that just undoes me a little, every single time. Because think about who the Ice King is. We've touched him tonight already, glancingly. He's the most tragic figure in this whole show. A man who lost his mind and his memory and the woman he loved to a cursed crown, who's left rambling and alone in an ice cave, stealing princesses he doesn't really want because he's forgotten how to be wanted. And here he is, writing himself a kinder world. A warmer ooh where the version of him gets to be part of things. And he can't even get anyone to read it, so he has to tie two people up and read it to them himself, just so it doesn't go unheard. I had to put that down for a minute the first time I really let it land, because it reframes the whole half hour you just enjoyed. All that fun, all that bright swapped around adventure, every clever little flip of it. And the whole time it was a lonely man at a desk in an ice cave, building somewhere warm out of words. Because the world he actually lives in forgot to leave him a place. And he doesn't even read it to a friend. He doesn't have one. He reads it to two people he had to capture first. That's the loneliest version of wanting to be heard there is. And the show just slips it in at the very end, almost like a footnote. Almost like it doesn't want you to notice how sad it is. So here's the thing I think Fiona and Cake quietly does to the whole series, and let me mark this clearly as my reading, as interpretation, not as fact. The show implies with this one twist that a dream can have an author, a known, named, lonely author. And once you've seen that, you can't unsee it, and it starts to color every other dream in the show. Every alternate world, every vision, every strange folded place we've drifted through tonight starts to look like it might be somebody's authored longing. Somebody, somewhere, wishing a kinder world into shape because the real one hurt. The Ice King writing himself somewhere he belongs. Read this way, that's what a dream is. Not random, not noise. A lonely person, quietly authoring a better version of things, and hoping someone's listening. There's one more place I want to take you, and it's a strange one, and it nearly went uncharted for a lot of fans. So let me get the details right. And I have to pause and be careful with you here, the way I've tried to be all night, because there's a real mix-up around this one. A lot of the older episode guides file it as a Season 7 episode. You'll still find it listed that way in some corners. But the verified placement, the one the authoritative sources confirm, is Season 8, Episode 3. It aired in April of 2016, so if you've seen it called Season 7 somewhere, that's the old misfiling, and I want you to have the corrected version, Season 8, Episode 3. I'd rather hand you the true number than the popular one. And in it, Finn and Jake go swimming, and they get pulled down through a whirlpool, down through the spinning water into somewhere else entirely. A place the show calls Whirlpool World. And it's another one of these parallel dream dimensions. But this one has a particular flavor to it because it's full of rearranged counterparts of everyone you know. There's a version of Finn down there, and a version of Jake, and a Princess Bubblegum, and a Marceline, and Bimo the little robot and Tree Trunks, and the Ice King, all of them present but shuffled, remixed, not quite themselves. the way people are in a dream when you know exactly who they are even though they look and act a little wrong. And there's a purple substance in this world, and the purple substance erases your memory. The longer you stay, the more you forget, the more you start to belong there and lose the thread of home. Which is such a precise piece of dream logic, isn't it? That the danger isn't a monster. The danger is that you'll forget you came from anywhere else and just sink in and stay. And what finally saves them, and I love this, is a creature called the sea lard. A big, sentient, strange thing that, in the end, simply pushes them back home, pushes them up and out of the dream and back into their own world before the forgetting can finish. There's something so tender about that. Not a battle, not an escape they cleverly engineer, just some great kind being deciding it isn't their time to stay, and sending them home. Now, I'll flag something here because I always want to draw the line between what's in the show and what fans have built on top of it. Some fans have read Beyond the Grotto as a kind of meta layer, a quiet little statement about how Adventure Time itself works for us, the viewers. The idea being that Ooh is to us what Whirlpool World is to Finn and Jake, a beautiful parallel dream dimension we swim down into, full of rearranged versions of feelings and people we know, where it's lovely to stay a while but you're not meant to forget your own life and live there forever. That nobody official has confirmed that's what they meant by it. It's a fan reading, an unconfirmed one, and I offer it to you as that. But I'll tell you, at this hour, lying here, swimming down into this show to fall asleep, it does land a little close to home. We came down through the whirlpool too, and eventually something gentle pushes us back up. Let me fold in one more, just briefly and lightly, because it's honestly a little hard to find solid ground on. There's an episode called A Glitch is a Glitch, Season 5, Episode 15, and it aired in April of 2013 on April 1st, which feels about right for what it is. In it, reality itself starts to glitch. The world's own logic and its appearance begin to break down, the way a game does when something goes wrong underneath it, things stuttering and corrupting and coming apart at the seams of how the world is even drawn. And I want to be straight with you, this one is only thinly documented in the sources I trust, so I'm not going to invent a tour of it I can't stand behind. I'll just leave you with the shape of it. The idea that even the rules of the world, the very code the dream is running on, can hiccup and tear. That nothing here is as solid as it pretends, not even the seams. So let me pull all these threads together now, softly, because I think they finally answer the question I left in the dark with you at the start. Look at what we've gathered. A mind you can walk through, full of memories nested inside memories. A pair of glasses that lets you fall outward through scale until you're a speck inside a galaxy. A whole beloved world that turned out to be one lonely man's story read aloud. A dream dimension under a whirlpool where you slowly forget you ever came from anywhere. A reality that can glitch and tear in its own code. And the thing they all share, the thing this whole show keeps whispering, is that the dreamer is never quite who you think. You start out so sure you're the one watching, and then the floor moves. You went into Marceline's mind, but whose mind held that? You laughed along with Fiona's adventure, but it was the Ice King's all along. You swam down into Whirlpool World as a visitor, but a visitor is just someone who hasn't forgotten yet. And if you follow that all the way down, all the way out, here's where it lands, and let me mark this last one as my reading too, gently. If every dream in this show has a dreamer, then there's an outermost one, a final dreamer at the very end of the chain, holding all the others. And the show can't show you that person, because that person isn't in the show. It's you. It's the person lying in the dark, watching, letting all of this drift across the inside of your eyes. You are the dreamer the whole nested thing has been folded up inside this entire time. And I can't think of a gentler note to fall asleep on than that you were never just watching the dreams, you were the one holding them. Which brings me all the way back around to the question underneath the whole night. The one I started with, the one about how thin the wall is between waking and not. We've spent these hours proving episode by episode just how thin this show always believed that wall to be. Dreams leaking into rooms, memories you can walk through, lifetimes lived in minutes, whole worlds that were only ever somebody's longing. And I told you way back at the beginning that I thought this show was quietly trying to teach us something about that thinness. Here's what I've come to, lying here with you. That thin wall was never the scary thing. The thinness is the mercy. It's exactly what makes it safe to let go right now. Because if waking and sleeping are really only a thin, soft membrane apart, then crossing it isn't a fall. It's barely a step. You won't even feel the edge. Remember, way back, I promised you a whole lifetime could happen on a pillow, that you could close your eyes for what feels like a single breath and live an entire other life behind them before morning. That's the gift at the thin edge of sleep, and this whole show has been pointing at it the entire time. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to solve any of it. The dreamer at the end of the chain doesn't need to understand the dream. They just need to let it carry them. So that's the last thing I want to leave in your hands as you go. You are the final link, the last dreamer, and I'm going to hand you off now, softly, into whatever your own mind decides to fold up and show you tonight. And you don't owe it a single resolution. You don't have to follow the plot. You don't even have to stay awake for this. The scream will keep murmuring here in the dark long after you've slipped under. And that's all right. Let it. Let the voice go blurry. Let the room go soft. Go on down through the whirlpool. Something gentle is holding the other end. And so, with you drifting right at that thin, warm edge now, let me close all of this the only way it should be closed. With one last quiet reflection on what a strange and tender thing this whole show really was. So let me bring us all the way back in one slow breath to where we started. The storm of knives outside a window we never once had to fear. The whole lifetime folded down inside a pillow fort. A man who grew old and was loved and then woke up a boy with none of it left. The worm's dream that wouldn't hold still. The body lying quiet while the looser part of a boy drifted up and out, all the way to Mars. The long chain of living things we dissolved down into. Bird and bacteria and grass and the small green thing on the leaf. The colder country where one good wish went differently and everyone we loved came back rearranged and sadder. The memories we walked through. The fan fiction we slowly realized we were living inside. One night, one quiet house. Room after room after room. And underneath all of it, I kept carrying the same question. If a cartoon made for children kept slipping into dreams, into other timelines, into whole lifetimes that pass in minutes, what was it trying to teach us so gently about how thin the wall is between waking and not? And here, now, with the lights off and your breathing already gone slow, I think I can finally answer it plainly. The wall was always thin. That was the whole secret. This little show just kept walking through it on purpose, again and again, like the wall was a curtain and not a wall at all. And the thing is, that thinness sounds frightening in daylight. It sounds like something to brace against. But here, right at the edge of sleep, it turns over and becomes the kindest thing in the world. Because if the wall is that thin, then letting go of the day isn't falling. It's just stepping through. You don't have to hold the line tonight. You're allowed to let it blur. There's one last thing I held back. Every dream in this whole show had a dreamer behind it. Jake dreaming the room full of lava, Finn dreaming his way out of the worm, the universe, maybe, dreaming a colder Earth in its sleep. A chain of dreamers, each one tucked inside the dream of the one before. And tonight, at the very end of that chain, the outermost one, the last of all, is you. You were here the whole time. Everything we wandered through was happening one room in from where you're lying right now. Thank you for spending this stretch of the dark with me. I really do mean that. Letting a voice talk you down towards sleep is a quiet kind of trust, and I don't take it lightly. If you want me here again on another long night like this one, you can subscribe, and I'll keep these coming for whoever you are next time. No rush, you don't have to do anything at all. Just stay here a little longer. The room is soft. The storm can't reach you. And somewhere a boy is crawling deeper into the cushions, and the floor is going quiet, and the colors are starting to run together at the edges, and you're already mostly through the curtain now. Already somewhere warmer. Already gone.